Whether it's been a good year or whether it's been a really tough year, what gets measured gets done. Hey, what's up guys? Dan Trevidi here. I hope you're all well. I hope you all had a fantastic Christmas and a really good New Year, even though most of you watching this would have been celebrating it with some form of restrictions. It kind of is really fitting for this video and the year that we've had. And no matter where you are in the country, where you are in the world, what industry you're involved in, it has been a year like no others. And look, I'm not going to repeat what I've already said in dozens of videos and probably what most of you have been hearing across social media, YouTube and all the news channels for the best part of a year. I'm not going to reflect too much on the year, but what I have done is start to take account of what I have been doing in a measurable format. Because a long time ago, I learned that what gets measured gets done. And it is very hard sometimes when you're in property or you're in investing and you've got multiple streams of income and multiple things going on through to purchases, to sales, to rentals, to refurbs, to developments, how to measure a start and end date over a calendar year, and how to determine the results that you've achieved and how to determine whether you've had a successful or not successful year, because there's so many variants going on. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I do measure those different factors, and I'm going to take you right through different stages, and I'm going to finish with what I believe after years of investing is the correct measure of success over that period of time. And I'm going to tell you how I format that measure into a set of numbers, into a set of accounts that can be seen on Companies House in the public forum, which can demonstrate the substance behind what people are doing and saying on things like YouTube videos and social media. So as ever, before we get started, if you can hit 2021 by smashing the like button and hitting subscribe and the little bell icon next to it, you'll be doing me a huge favor. So look, we all know 2020 has been a completely different year to what any of us thought it was going to be. And if you have been following me on Instagram and Facebook, you would have seen a couple of my posts to do with the New Year's Eve celebrations and the Brexit. And I just want to touch on that because I remember when the Brexit vote came in. I remember as the votes were being counted, I was in Centre Parks with my family. I was watching it as it came in throughout the night, and pretty much by about 6:30, 7 a.m, we knew what the result was going to be. And a few hours later, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, who I thought was brilliant, even though he didn't do landlords any favours, decided to resign. And I remember I was working with dozens and dozens of different investors at the time, and they were messaging me on Facebook, they were ringing me, they were texting me, they were like, look, we need to sell our properties, we need to get out of these deals, the world is going to end. And that was one of the biggest first hurdles that I had to overcome, not because I agreed or disagreed with what they were saying. What I knew is that you shouldn't act on impulse to big announcements, media hype, when you're talking about a long-term investment strategy. I had some really difficult conversations with some investors, and look, I didn't win them all. Some of the deals we decided to sell to get out of the deal. One, because the investor was so panicky, but two, I was prepared to take a little bit of a hit to exit that joint venture, because there's no point trying to flog a dead horse. And there is also no point trying to convince someone who has already made their mind up whether it be right or wrong. And fast forward, we've had quite a few different things happen within the market, within politics, within global politics that have created similar types of reactions. What I've learned is to never react impulsively, take a step back, observe, and see where the opportunities are going to be in between the gaps. And when the coronavirus hit, even though it was a hurdle that I'd never experienced before, I repeatedly said on these videos, do not react. Try and find the opportunities. And I think the biggest opportunity was in April when the market was brought to its knees, it was frozen, and there was still some things like auction companies still selling, but people weren't buying, and the people who were selling were desperate to sell. So I was able to pick up some great deals. And those deals, they're only great if I can materialize the return, the cash flow, and the profit and the equity that I forecast. And it's that what I'm going to talk about. It's that measurable format that how I can determine how successful my year has been. There are many different ways property people can look to measure their success. The first thing is to start measuring. The next thing is, what do you measure? Now, have you heard the good old phrase, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity? Well, it is exactly the same in property. Although it's not turnover, it's called number of properties or number of rooms. Whenever you go to networking events, whenever you talk to people, it's always, oh, how many properties do you have? And depending on who you talk to and what sector they're invested in, the numbers will vary. Now, I've asked that question and I get told 200. But it's not 200 properties, it's 200 rooms. Then I get told 60, but it's not 60 properties, it's 60 flats, and each flat is one of 10 in a block or whatever it is. And then some people will say, look, I've got 10 individual houses and they're HMOs, which is probably a more rounded, realistic number if you are comparing apples for apples. It's number of individual houses. But an accountant once told me, looking after one of his clients who had 80 individual properties, not 80 rooms, not 80 flats, individual terraced houses, 80 separate houses, which is a very large portfolio. But the sector that he was renting to and the mortgages that he had on those properties, he would have been lucky to make what I make of 2 HMOs per year. And it was the accountant that told me that. So don't measure your ego and don't measure your turnover. You can measure the number of properties you have. It's always good to know. But on my radar, it's probably the thing that I know the least. So when people ask me, yo, how many properties have you got? I kind of have to think about it because I'm always buying and I'm always selling. And when I give the answer, people are like, well, how can you not know exactly? So I have to then just think about what I've sold and what I've bought over the last few months or weeks. And the reason is because I am not concerned about how many rooms and how many properties that I have. What I'm concerned about is the performance of my money in those investments, and if I can get my money out when it's coming back to me, and the equity that I've created and the net cash flow. And that's really important, is the net cash flow. And again, like number of properties, like turnover, a lot of the gurus, a lot of the serviced accommodation and professional HMO trainers will talk to you about the glitz and the glamour and the lights of the headline target rental figures. And I have always been one to question what is the high level expected rent to the net rent after cost, maintenance and voids. And when you take voids into consideration on professional HMOs and serviced accommodations versus something, say, like a student let, which is signed up for 12 months of the year and there is no voids, it's signed there as a whole house, you start to get a very different picture from the headline figure to the net. So let's get into what I think you should measure and what I measure. So definitely, first priority is return on cash, return on your investment. This is how much money you have and how much money you have in a deal or you can put into a deal and how much that is going to give you back initially while that money's locked in there, and then how much of that money you can extract out of the deal, if not all of it. So that is a really great way to measure your performance on your cash. So let's say you're starting out and you have 0 or you have 20,000 or you have 50,000, whatever it is, wherever you're starting, how much money are you producing from your investment? Whether that be your 50,000 or whether that be you've got no income, so it's all of your time. You need to be looking at what the net return is on that cash. For me, what I do is I measure the cash that I have for a specific deal. So not my cash in total in various banks, because I like to de-risk my cash, so I don't have it all in property. I have it in banks, I have it in ISAs, I have it in S&P ISAs, and I have it in various different structures to ensure that I can be liquid if I need to be quite quickly. So if you take my overall return on investment on cash that I hold, it's going to be a lot less than the cash that I have to play with for property. So for me, I measure what's relevant to me at that time. I'm not really interested in my safety nets, my rainy day funds, because that has a different level of security, a different level of diversification, and a different level of expected return on investment. It is all about the cash that I have going into a deal. So if I have a deal that I want to buy, I work out exactly how much cash I've got to put together to make that deal happen, to buy that property. And I use the Grace Charles app. There's a link in the comments below, which has a return on investment calculator, and it has 2 stages to it. And this is stage 1. So deposit, stamp duty, legal fees, valuation, mortgage fees, refurbishment costs, interest over the period. Whatever that figure is, let's call it 90,000, 100,000. I want to be making at least 20% return on that investment. If for whatever reason I release that cash because the market fell off a cliff, I know that that money locked up in that deal, I'm going to be getting 20% return on investment if it's a rental property that I'm buying. Then stage 2 on the Grace Charles app, the stage 2 for me is how much of my cash can I expect to extract out of the deal after I've refinanced it. And this is the biggest measure for me, because I'll only ever buy the deal and employ stage 1 if I truly believe I'm buying a property significantly below market value, which enables me, gives me a better chance of extracting the money out at this end, even if the market drops slightly or some uncertainty in the market for whatever reason. So I look to what my expected cash return out is going to be after I refinance it. And either all of my cash is coming out and a little bit extra, which is a good result for me, or the cash that is left in the deal is going to pay me back over a 12-month period 100% by the rental income. That is 100% return on investment on the cash left in the deal over the next 12-month period. And those are the 2 true measures for me on picking a deal and using my cash for each individual deal. And you might think, well, that all sounds really good, Dan, but how does that become a measurable format over a 12-month period? How can you put that into facts and figures onto a spreadsheet? Well, really simply put, is the next thing, is measuring my increase in net cash flow. So I have a net cash flow figure which breaks down to properties into individual companies and into my own personal name. And it has the gross figure, it has the costs, it has the mortgage, any utilities, and then the net figure. So I could quite easily show you the gross figure and it would sound really good, but I have mortgages on pretty much all the properties. So the net figure is what it's all about for me. And I break it down. 1, it's good for the accountant to see, what I've got coming in my personal name, and we need to measure that because it's not tax efficient. So slowly I'm selling those properties. And then the increase in my net cash flow in my companies. And that is quite an easy, measurable result to monitor over the year period. But for me, the biggest one is the wealth that you create. This is what I think separates from employees and business owners to true investors and entrepreneurial people. It's also, unfortunately, what separates the rent-to-renters and the deal sources from those building long-term sustainable wealth through owning the property. Now, going back to what I said earlier on in the video, when I buy a property that is significantly below market value with the cash that I've put aside for that property, I want to get all of that cash out. And then I have a mortgage balance, which then has a property value, and there's an equity measure in between. And it's that equity which is a true driver of building wealth. And it's the exact measure that I measure my whole year on. So cash flow is king. I'm not going to deny that. That's why the first part was getting the cash out, because you can't do much when you don't have cash. But the results at the end of the bottom of the page is going to be your net equity, your balance sheet, whatever you want to call it, your net wealth. And you can have your balance sheet, you can have your net equity of personal properties, all of your savings in another column, and it will give you your net wealth. And even though 2020 has been a really tough year, like I said, if you slip through the cracks and you see the wood for the trees, there has been some excellent deals out there to have. and there is going to be more excellent deals in 2021. We're not out of this yet. We're going to hit some more barriers. We're going to have to jump through some more hoops before we are in the clear. So there's going to be more and more opportunities. If you start to really look at what you want to measure, you will start to see the results because you are looking at what you are measuring. And if you take my lead and follow cash flow, but more importantly, wealth, balance sheet, equity, you will start to see the net worth, the net wealth of your company, your personal assets, whatever it is, start to really increase. And then if you do it in a company and the right structure for the right properties is put together by your accountants, you can start to show that on Companies House. And a lot of you will know that I semi-retired December 19 when I sold my main company, and I actually sold it less than what it was net worth. So my balance sheet for December 19 actually went down based on me selling shares for less than what they were worth. But my performance in my measurables over 2020, which was cash flow and net equity or balance sheet growth, will demonstrate that if you focus on those two, it can have huge impacts on your overall wealth. And when I submit the 2020 accounts at the end of January, you can go on Companies House and you can, after watching this video, you can look at my accounts and you can see the ones that I'm talking about, which dropped in value at the end of December 19, and then the value at the end of December 2020. And you can see for yourself the amount of equity I've created in finding the right deals, buying them below market value, adding the right value, and knowing what the market is. And it's that measure which, no matter who you speak to, who decides to argue with you, who asks you to prove X, Y, and Z, if you've got a balance sheet which is available on Companies House, which shows part of your wealth through a company, you can't show everything, can't show personal wealth, but if you can show part of your wealth through your company, that is going to go a long way when you are talking to people about deals, to lenders, and about anything else. So, how has your year been at 2020? Comment below. I'd love to hear about what's been good for you, what hasn't been so good. If you're struggling, talk to me. I'll try and help you, and how you measure your success. But look, that's it from me. First video of 2021. Back to the weekly uploads. Stay safe. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.